Hello and welcome to this new video. Within this video we're going to talk about King Arthur, the Fianna and Tuatha Danann. So within this episode we're going to go, not as deep within King Arthur himself, but very much focus on the Koryos and also connections to different goddess figures as well. Where in the last Koryos related video, we're gonna go deeper into the connection between the Koryos and such a sovereignty kind of goddess. Where the main focus of this video is, an exploration of Koryos and King Arthur related themes. King Arthur is known for his sword Excalibur, pulling the sword from the stone, Camelot, and the wizard Merlin. The Arthurian legend, however, is an ancient story from the British Isles with uncertain origins. It has evolved over many centuries through contributions from various authors, and the historicity of its main character, King Arthur, has been debated by scholars. The origins of the legend can be traced to as late as the pagan Celtic times, but the main Arthurian era is typically set in the 5th and 6th centuries AD, the time when the historical Arthur is said to have lived. And the first literary references to King Arthur can be found in Historia Brittonum, an early historical account by a 9th century Welsh historian, Nennius, in which Arthur is portrayed as a skilled warrior. Yet within this video, I will, instead of the myth itself, go into the underlying historical and mythological layers of the myths and look at the lesser known aspects of Arthurian legend, especially linked to the Celtic myths. While in some versions of the Arthurian legend it is said that Arthur is a descendant of Odin, the roots of King Arthur's famous sword Excalibur, however, can be traced back to Celtic mythology. The sword appears in Welsh stories, later renamed by Geoffrey of Monmouth to Caliburn, and then reshaped into today's form Excalibur. In Arthurian legend, Arthur gets the sword by pulling it out of a stone and makes him the rightful king of the country. He also gets another sword called Excalibur from the Lady of the Lake, which he returns to her after being wounded at the Battle of Camelot. The lake plays an important role in the story, which has its origin in Celtic times, where lakes, streams and rivers were special places that were closely connected with the natural world and were worshipped by the Celts. Where the presence of the Lady of the Lake in Arthurian legend could be explained as an echo of one of the Celtic water goddesses. The motive of casting the sword back into the lake has its roots in Celtic culture as well. The Celts believed that rivers and lakes were sources of vital powers, and they highly respected them and worshipped them, often using lakes as storage places for their treasures. But also, the lakes and waters were portals to the underworld. And the role of a water goddess in many mythologies, including Celtic and Indo-European myth, often involves a connection to both the world of the living and the world of the dead, or the underworld. And as the element of water is associated with change, transformation, and fluidity, a water goddess is often seen as a liminal figure who can facilitate movement between different realms or states of being. Think anima, but also the spirit spouse of the shaman, to give another example of such a liminal figure. And in some myths, the water goddess is also associated with fertility and abundance, as water is a vital element for growth and life. And the connection to the other world or the underworld may represent a symbolic journey into the depths of the psyche or the mysteries of life and death, if we take this from a Jungian lens as well further. And Celtic mythology includes several water deities, such as the Welsh Rhiannon was associated with lakes and horses, and the Irish goddess Boann, who was connected to the river Boyne. And these deities were often seen as powerful and benevolent figures who could control the elements and bestow blessings upon those who worshipped them. And in Celtic mythology, water was often then also seen as a gateway to the underworld or the other world, which was believed to be a realm inhabited by powerful deities and spirits. The Celts believed that bodies of water, such as lakes, streams, and rivers, were particularly important portals to the other world, and that they could be used to travel between the worlds. The Celts further believed that spirits and deities could travel between the worlds through bodies of water, and that lakes, streams, and rivers were particularly important gateways. As a result, many Celtic burial sites and sacred places were located near bodies of water. Additionally, bodies of water were often associated with healing and purification. So Celtic people would often bathe in lakes and rivers as a way to cleanse themselves both physically and spiritually, and they believed that certain bodies of water had particularly powerful healing properties. Yet if we now go back to the other sword, pulled from the stone, well, the origin of the other sword, which was pulled by King Arthur out of said stone, could be found in ancient Celtic times as well. The stone with the sword in it plays an important role in determining the future king, which can be compared with the Leal Fail, or the Stone of Fate, one of the 4 talismans of the Tuatha Danann. And according to mythology, this magical stone was able to shriek loudly when a person was supposed to be king. Further, the Leal Fail was considered a powerful symbol of sovereignty and was said to have been placed at the coronation side of the High Kings of Ireland. And the Tuatha Danann brought, 4 talismans to Ireland. The Leal Fail, the Stone of Destiny, the Sword of Light, a powerful weapon, the Spear of Luke, a symbol of authority, and the Cauldron of the Dagda, a source of endless food and inspiration. And these 4 talismans were believed to have given the Tuatha Danann immense power and were said to have been used to defeat their enemies and establish their rule in Ireland. And the Sword of Light is one of the 4 talismans brought to Ireland by the Tuatha Danann in Irish mythology. It was considered a powerful weapon and was said to have been used by the Tuatha Danann to defeat their enemies and establish their rule in the land. The sword was said to emit a bright light and to have the ability to cause wounds that could never be healed. It symbolized the power and strength of the Tuatha Danann and was an important part of their mythology. And the mythical elements regarding King Arthur, bringing it back to that, also have another figure as its Celtic roots. This would be Fionn mac Cumhaill, who is a hero in Irish mythology, as well as in later Scottish and Manx folklore. Connecting King Arthur and his knights through this connection, but also the one regarding the Tuatha Danann, to the Koryos tradition in a more ancient sense, though heavily Christianized at this point. However, coming back to Fionn, he as a figure is the leader of the Fianna bands of young roving hunter warriors, which have been linked to the Koryos, as well as being a seer and poet, also think Odin. He is said to have a magic thumb that bestows him with great wisdom, and he is often depicted hunting with his hounds Bran and Scaelang, and fighting with his spear and sword. Fionn's sword was called Mac an Luan, where Fionn also obtained a special spear, the Birga. Now when it comes to Fionn, he was raised by his aunt, a powerful druidess named Bortmal, and her sister Liath Luachra, who trained him in the arts of war and magic. And he grew up to become a great warrior and leader of the Fianna, a group of skilled hunters and fighters who roamed the countryside and protected the people of Ireland. One of Fionn's most famous exploits was the slaying of the ferocious boar known as the Beasts of Ben Bulben, where he also had many other adventures as well, including battles with giants, battles against invading armies, and quests for magical treasures. In addition to his prowess in battle, Fionn was also known for his wisdom and poetic ability. He gained what commentators have called the Thumb of Knowledge after eating a certain salmon, thought to be the salmon of wisdom, and this gave him the ability to see into the future and understand the hidden meaning of things. Like I said earlier, As well, Fionn was also closely associated with his hounds Bran and Sciollang, who were said to be fierce and loyal companions to him, and they were often depicted hunting with him, and their howling was said to be able to raise the dead. And before he completed the feat of defeating the firebrand of the Fairy Mount and defending Tara, he is described as a 10-year-old marauder and an outlaw. And one feat Fionn performed at 10 years of age was to slay Eilen, the fire-breathing man of the Tuatha Dé Danann, who had come to wreak destruction on the Irish capital of Tara every year on the festival of Samhain for the past 23 years, lulling the city's men to sleep with his music, then burning down the city and its treasures. But in a non-mythological context, the actual Fianna warrior bands also have been connected to the Morrigan, who had been also connected to a ritual surrounding dog sacrifice. One such example of a link between them is found at the burnt mound site known as the Cooking Pit of the Morrigan. And these sites are found in wild areas and are associated with outsiders such as the Fianna, as well as with the hunting of deer. Where another site, called the Two Breasts of the Morrigan, a pair of hills in Meath County, further is suggested by scholars as a probable link between her and the Fianna as a sort of tutelary goddess, also known as a guardian deity. And when it comes to the Morrigan, well, she's often described as a trio of individuals, all sisters, called the Three Morrigna. In mythology, membership of the triad is given as Babd, meaning crow, Maka, meaning of the plain, and Anand, also known as Anu, which is an alternate name for Danu. And the real-world Fianna were small warrior hunter bands that existed in Gaelic Ireland during the Iron Age and the early Middle Ages, comprising free-born young males, often from the Gaelic nobility. And these individuals had left fosterage but had not yet inherited the necessary property to settle down as full land-owning members of the Tuat, meaning assembly. And scholars suggest that the Fianna served as a rite of passage into manhood and draw parallels between them and similar young warrior bands in other early European cultures. And references to the historical institution of the Fianna are found in early medieval manuscripts. They were made up of a small group of roaming hunter-warriors, primarily consisting of landless young men of free birth, often from the aristocracy. The Fianna way of life involved living in the wild, engaging in activities such as hunting, raiding, martial and athletic training, training in poetry, and serving as mercenaries. Wild animals, particularly the wolf and the deer, appear to have been totem animals for the Fianna. And finally, taking it back to the realm of mythology, according to the most popular account of Fionn's death, he is not dead at all. Rather, he sleeps in a cave surrounded by the Fianna. And it is said that one day he will awake and defend Ireland in the hour of her greatest need. Much like King Arthur is said to do as well. Where another unrelated, interesting Koryos connection within Celtic mythology is the figure of Chulainn, and he is believed to be an incarnation of the Irish god Luch, who is also his father. Luch being a figure in Irish mythology who is a member of the Tuatha Dé Danann. Luch being portrayed as a warrior, a king, a master craftsman, and a savior, where in one Irish myth, he must retrieve a magical cow. In this myth, the magical cow, known as the Brown Bull of Cúchulainn, is stolen. And the central conflict of this myth revolves around the theft of this prized and enchanted bull, the Queen of Connacht, Mebt, being behind the stealing of the cow, where in the end the Morrigan, meaning the Great Queen or Phantom Queen, attacks him in various animal forms. Cuchulainn is also next to this linked to a dog, as after killing Culann's first guard dog in self-defense, he offers to take its place. Hence, he became the Hound of Chulainn, carrying the spear Gay Bulk, where he's also known to fight from his chariot. making him another prime example of the Koryos motif within Celtic mythology. Yet regarding King Arthur, however, the Tuatha Danann are also often named as one other potential source for the myths regarding Arthur as well. They are known as the people of the goddess Danu, and are a powerful race of gods and goddesses in Irish mythology. They are said to have come to Ireland as conquerors, defeating the previous inhabitants of the island and establishing their rule. The Tuatha Danann were associated with elements of nature, particularly with the sky, earth, and underworld, and they were believed to have control over the elements and the forces of nature, where they dwell in the other world, but were said to enter into the human world. Further, they were also associated with the ancient burial mounds, which for then ancient Celts were entrances to the other world. And the Tuatha Danann have also been linked to the Indo-European Koryos, as both are considered to be groups of supernatural beings who possess powerful magic and wisdom. However, the exact relationship between the two is still a matter of debate among scholars. Some suggest that the Tuatha Danann are a remnant of an ancient Indo-European culture that migrated to Ireland, while others believe that they are a unique creation of Irish mythology with no direct connection to other Indo-European cultures. Yet in either case, the Tuatha Danann and the Koryos share many similarities in terms of their cultural and religious practices, suggesting a common origin of influence. So most likely the Koryos is the foundation for it. And when it comes to the Tuatha Danann, they're obviously also linked to Danu. And Danu herself, as mother goddess, is in Irish mythology the matron deity of the Tuatha Danann. And she is often associated with water, sovereignty, and fertility, and is said to have given birth to the Tuatha Danann. And really, Danu is considered to be a powerful and mysterious figure in Irish mythology, and is revered as a source of life, wisdom, and inspiration. Danu is often also referred to as the mother goddess or mother of all things, and is also associated with abundance and prosperity, next to a link to ancestors. And she is one of the most ancient and powerful of the Celtic deities, and her name is believed to be derived from the word for river or water. Yet the etymology of her name, however, has been a matter of much debate. Earlier scholars favored a link with the Vedic water goddess Danu, whose name is, according to them, derived from the Proto-Indo-European word meaning to run or to flow, which could make sense as Danu is often associated with water and is sometimes referred to as a goddess of rivers. And in this role, she is believed to have had control over the flow and the movement of water, and is often depicted as a nurturing and protective figure who uses water to nourish and sustain life. And in Celtic mythology, as I had said, water was often seen as a gateway to the other world, and Danu could have thus been able to travel between the worlds using bodies of water as portals. Where I had said already earlier that Danu is sometimes also seen as similar to the figure of Anu, which is sometimes mentioned as Anan or Anand. The latter name is connected to the Morrigan, and as we have established, she is seen as a goddess of battle and war, and also as a manifestation of the sovereignty goddess, next to her having a connection with the Fianna. There's also establishing a connection to the term Tuat, next to their association with the Morrigan and her possibly being their tutelary goddess in a real-world sense. But what is now interesting regarding this is, that the Morrigan is also described next as the envious wife of the Dagda, a large bearded man or giant wearing a hooded cloak. And he is one of the Tuatha Danann and is portrayed as a king, druid, and father figure, and is further associated with things such as fertility, agriculture, strength, magic, druidry, and wisdom, next to owning a magic staff of dual nature, which kills with one end and brings to life with the other. He has been also linked to Odin, due to his epithets such as horseman, allfather, lord of great knowledge, and striker. Next, he also was one of the kings of the Tuatha Danann, where the Tuatha Dé, meaning tribe of the gods, eventually, however, becoming the fairies. Such fairies, as much as the Tuatha Danann, are connected to burial mounds and are found throughout much of the world. This also is common in, for instance, Scandinavian mythology regarding elves, and also within Iceland with their own version of elves called Alagabletir. And these are for the Icelandic people also associated with the hidden people, often referred to as the Holdu folk. And both of these are often connected to fertility, but also with burial mounds. Also connected to the term Holdra, which similarly means secret or covered. That we talked about earlier regarding the figure of Holda, and the linked holder is one of several Ra, which means warden of particular places, so a type of spirit of place. Think the Japanese kami or Norse Vetir. And in the ancient animistic sense, it was important for people to cultivate good relationships with these type of spirits, since they had power over the natural forces and animals under their care, and could cause both good and bad luck for humans who interfered with the places and creatures under their watch. And this, again, also links to the idea of the mistress of the beasts next to the holder who either stole or protected cattle. We could also see this similar connection with Holda being linked to cattle and the wild hunt. And also the Morgan linked to cattle and the Fianna, who are said to be a Koryos descendant tradition. Further establishing such a connection between the Koryos and such a tutelary goddess figure that might have been a sovereign goddess of sorts linked to cattle. Which, looking at the cattle raiding the Koryos did, would make sense. And regarding King Arthur, this morphed into his connection to the Lady of the Lake, Morgan Le Fay, but also, in a deeper sense, the Holy Grail, next to there being the Round Table Knights as well. Linking this all back to, well, the Fianna, Cúchulainn, and in the deeper sense, the Koryos.